Back. Yes, it is. It's time for the wonderful world of sports, and I'm your host, Danny Thompson, checking in with you. It is July 29th, 2018, and I know most people normally hear my voice as a guy that does basketball because I am the lead creator and writer for AroundTheAssociation.com. But I do more than just basketball. So I do cover the Jacksonville Jaguars for Florida National News as well as FanCred Sports. I also cover Orlando City Soccer as well as the Orlando Pride's women's soccer team and UCF college athletics down here in Orlando. So I do have a little bit of a working knowledge of a lot of the sports, and I've covered the different sports from around the world. And so this show, we did it over at Rollins College back in the early part of September. Some things happened with the university, and a great place to do a radio show is just some logistic issues going back. So now we're back in a podcasting form. Don't worry, there's more to come later. But for the next 30 or so minutes, we're going to talk about everything in the wonderful world of sports. So I tried not to talk basketball on this show, only because of the fact of I do have a basketball podcast, which I do talk NBA on a consistent basis. So this is going to be much more of an all sports format. So as we start talking all sports, let's talk about something, the biggest news of yesterday. No, it's not what ESPN talked about yesterday, because when you turned on SportsCenter, either late last night or first thing in the morning, the first thing you saw was Major League Baseball. No offense to Major League Baseball, because it is the trade deadline, which is coming up on Tuesday, on the 31st. But there was something that was a little bit more important yesterday, in my opinion. It was the WNBA All-Star game. I know, the WNBA All-Star game. You were thinking about, okay, when you turn it to 6 o'clock SportsCenter, it was a top story because it was something that just ended. By the time actually after the soccer game, international soccer game last night, it was mentioned in the very beginning of SportsCenter, and then, about maybe 10 minutes into the show, you saw it. You wake up this morning on SportsCenter, and next thing you know, they're going over the top stories. With SportsCenter's intro theme come on, you see just a quick image of Liz Cambridge's dunk, and then Maya Moore holding the trophy, and that was it. No mention of the All-Star game in any of the top 4 stories they had on there. So, and then when you start watching SportsCenter, the first things you see is Major League Baseball. And like I said, there's no offense to Major League Baseball. I think baseball is at a great time right now because it is going into the trade deadline. But if we go back to, and we're going to flash back, this is going to show my age here, April 24th of 1996. That was the day the WNBA was created. And they had the campaign of We Got Next. And you remember for almost a year, we saw, it was Rebecca Lobo, Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops. They're part of that movement, of the We Got Next movement. Now, not to mention at the same time, there was a second professional league, the ABL, going on with players like Dawn Staley and those women, Kate Starbird, Nikki McRae, Jen Rosati, they all were part of the ABL. That was another wonderful women's league. But the WNBA had, 3 of the top players that were on the United States 96 women's team, and really, it was 1 year of promotion. All you saw was WNBA everywhere. We Got Next. They put the teams in place. There were 8 teams. My hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, we had this thing. There was Cleveland, Houston, New York, LA, Phoenix, Sacramento, and Utah. 8 teams. When the season began June 21st, 1997, the first game was between LA and New York in Los Angeles. The game was played at the Great Western Forum at the time. And you can tell that the WNBA had a lot of star power. I mean, it was playing to sell out crowds. Now, if you go through Houston, anybody who knows the Houston Comets and knows that championship run they had in the very beginning, those 15 to 16,000 seats, when it was at the Summit, was completely full to the max. I mean, if you want to go back and see how the height of women's basketball at one point in time, go check out that final series, especially the game where Teresa Weatherspoon hit that shot from basically midcourt to win the championship, to extend the series. And you can see the crowd, literally. And all you saw was little girls who dreamed to be in the WNBA. Now, back in 99, ABL folded. A lot of those star players came over to the WNBA, and at that point, the basketball was the best it's ever had been. They expanded and added more teams to the league, and then the trouble started. After about 2002, the NBA, who was a lot of the team owners part of the NBA, started staying away from the WNBA. Started to get away or find third parties that were not involved with the teams. After Val Ackerman, the first president of the league, left in 2005, it was really a situation where the league was just transitioning. A lot of the NBA owners who were part of the WNBA decided to back away, and then we saw a lot of team moving and team folding. It was at one point the league had 16 teams. Now we're down to the 12 that we have now. And so not to focus on what happened in the past, let's focus on the now. Yesterday was their All-Star game. For 95% of the nation, a 3:30 tip-off on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of the summer is not exactly prime time. These women should have been on, literally at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, on ABC, in a prime time slot. Why not? It's the summertime. You're telling me that programming that on ABC on a Saturday night is not more important than promoting the game of women's basketball? If you go through forums, I mean, you even think about before the All-Star game, EA Sports made an announcement releasing the NBA Live 19 game, and one of the major features, and that's something we have not seen in a while, is a created character for women. So now, little girls who want to play basketball can actually create their own character and and play in the streets or play online with their male counterparts. You would think at that point it'd be one of those things where, hey, it's well upon received. Go on the chat, go on the forums, go look at the comments. It's mostly men saying, okay, well, they should be in the kitchen. They should be, what is this? Basket making or oven making or oven cleaning, so on and so forth. Now, mind you, these are some of the best women in the world. And at the same time, you go on these forums, you go on these chats, even if you look at the WNBA players that are on social media, they get challenged on a daily basis about being basketball players, or they can't play basketball. I had a conversation. No, I'm saying you walk around, you go to different places, and they say, the WNBA player can't beat a guy in basketball. First and foremost, let me explain something to you, because I've been around the NBA for a very, very long time, and I've seen my share of WNBA players come and go. And I actually was doing some work for a semi-pro basketball team out here in Orlando last season. Let me explain something to you. The WNBA girls, and even some of the semi-pro girls, but I'm just going to say, since I'm speaking of the WNBA, the women that make these 12 teams in the WNBA will beat 99% of men walking around in a game of one-on-one. I don't care if you can jump right now at 25, 30 years old, you can dunk, or you're bigger and stronger and faster. It does not matter. Because of the culture of nowadays of basketball, most people now, especially on the men's side, only care about dunking and making highlight reel moves and dribble moves. Okay? Yes, a lot of the girls are not going to out-jump you. But if you think, the average man can actually think they can beat Maya Moore or Diana Taurasi or Sue Bird, Angel McCautry. I'm not even going to get to the post players, but we're just talking about the perimeter players in the beginning. If you think you can outshoot Kayla McBride, put your check on it. Because I'm sure these women who make paychecks bigger than you, in most cases, should be able not to just beat you, but to destroy you. Don't think that these women didn't grow up playing against men when they were growing up, because they probably felt it and heard it all their lives. So, it's not like nowadays, even with girls growing up playing basketball, my daughter is one of them, they start in co-ed leagues growing up. It's not until you get to about maybe 10, 11 when you start seeing all-girl leagues. In the first couple years they're growing up, they're playing with boys. Even when they play on the streets, they play in the neighborhoods. Most times there's not a group of 9 girls right around a pickup game so girls can play 5-on-5. There isn't those things don't exist in a lot of cases. So they are playing with boys. And a lot of times when they get on the floor, they don't have the respect of the boys until they take it from them. And then at that point, if you listen to Candace Parker when she did the EA Sports, when she started playing basketball, she was the last to be picked. But by the next time she got to the court, she was the one picking teams. And not because Candace Parker's 6'3", 6'4", because Candace Parker is one of the best players in the world. So the other issue is that it comes to the pay scale. Well, why are these women not getting paid the same as the men? And I think it came up Liz Cambridge and Skylar Diggins. I can't remember her last name at this point. I'm sorry. Skylar Diggins. They talked about it. Skylar Diggins Smith. Thank you. They were talking about the equal pay for women, or making the same, or making somewhat similar to what they make in the men's side. The WNBA star players don't even make close to what the 13th man in the NBA roster makes. Yes, I know that women's basketball doesn't draw as much as men, or they have the same, the same stature as men. But think about this. Where's all the marketing and publicity dollars? If you go on the NBA game right now, their TV contracts are way bigger. Why? Because there's more exposure. I looked at the TV last week, and ESPN and ESPN2, who is the WNBA's main sponsor, was showing competitive gaming and the World Series of Poker on nights where the WNBA game is being played. So you're telling me that during the summer, like I said, where Major League Baseball is the only major sport, no offense to NASCAR, no offense to golf. Golf is only a weekend sport, and NASCAR is pretty much on Saturdays, and they have their NBC deal, and that's something completely different. You're telling me on a Saturday night, or even during the week, we can't get more WNBA games and live programming. I know ESPN does show baseball. ESPN2 does it show as well. And I mean, they have their MLS games they show as well too. But you're telling me that on a night you guys couldn't schedule a WNBA game on national TV, but you'd rather put on competitive gaming or put on the World Series of Poker? And no offense, World Series of Poker is very interesting, but that's something that's out in Las Vegas. Seriously. You can schedule that to come on at 11, 12 o'clock, or maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's still going on. Those things take hours anyway. Poker's not done in 10 minutes. It's done in a couple hours. But in the day and age where the WNBA has probably the most talented group of women that we've ever had, we're watching an All-Star game at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday. Not to mention, if you'd missed the three-point contest yesterday between Caleb McBride and Allie Quigley yesterday, and Allie tore it down, you missed one of the best three-point shooting contests we have seen in years. Allie knocked down 29 three-pointers in overtime, 29 points in the overtime period, and beat Caleb McBride in one of the most entertaining three-point contests we'll have. So what if these women don't dunk? And mind you, Liz Cambridge did dunk at the end of the game yesterday. Because they don't dunk and they do things differently does not mean it's not exciting basketball. For those who do not watch the WNBA, you'll know what you're missing. So what if a girl does not go down the court and jump off somebody and dunk in the middle of a game? Dunking does not give you extra points. And a lesson I learned from Kyrie Irving long time ago. Kyrie had mentioned to me, he asked me a question. He said, how many points is a dunk? I said 2. How many points is a jump shot? 2. How many points is a layup? 2. It all counts the same. So no matter if Maya Moore is dunking on you or Maya Moore is hitting you with an 18-foot step back, it still counts the same. You don't get extra points for dunking the basketball. It doesn't work that way. And it shows much more of a fundamental game. You look at the WNBA and where their facilities are now, with the exception of Atlanta, who's playing at Georgia Tech only for this year, the last 2 years, because the Phillips Arena is being renovated. If you look at the size of the arenas around the league, there are only a few teams that play in their NBA-related facilities. Indiana plays in theirs. Like I said, Atlanta plays in theirs when they go back into that facility. Washington's in theirs. LA's in theirs. Minnesota's in theirs. And Phoenix is in theirs. Seattle's the only team that's pretty much without an NBA ownership or without an NBA team in the same city because Seattle's always been a breeding ground. But if you look at places like Dallas, Chicago, even New York, and New York at one time was playing at the Garden, they're not affiliated with their parent clubs. So how can the WNBA get better? How can they get more exposure? Well, number one, people have to actually start watching. And how do you do that? You advertise. I mean, it's not the women need to advertise. You got to put money into the league. The owners, a lot of the owners do not have the NBA money. So why is Mark Cuban not investing in the Dallas Wings? You want to invest a talent base. We need to get some of these NBA owners back in the WNBA. It's the same way when Major League Baseball wants to get their minor league systems up. What do? They invest in their system. They invest in their farm clubs. Is the WNBA a farm club for the NBA? No, but if owners would think about it, it's a very profitable way of making money, if you want to say that. And if you get the NBA owners back into it and they start putting NBA dollars into this, or even the existing NBA owners will actually put money into this instead of just feel like it's casting it to the side, you'll see the growth. Because there's so many little girls out there, and I have one myself, she's 5. There's so many little girls out there who want the opportunity to see someone who looks just like them. And the girls in the league, they're some of the most fan-friendliest people you'll find. They'll take pictures. If you go on these girls' Snapchats or their Instagrams or their social media, you'll see how much they interact with young women or even just the fans themselves. Because one day, these girls that watch your superstars now, they're going to be doing the same thing later. And for all the men out there who think this is some kind of sexist thing, I wonder how many of y'all have daughters. And I wonder if your daughter wants to play basketball, will you tell her to go get in the kitchen? That's what I want to know. You going to tell your daughter to get in the kitchen? Because my daughter's not going to get in the kitchen. I'm not going to tell her to. I mean, she's going to learn how to cook. But my thing is, if my daughter wants to play basketball, she is going to play basketball. And guess what? She's going to be better than most of the boys out there anyway. Because that's how she is. And the girls in the WNBA, and you go on their social medias and you see these guys challenging them on a regular basis. There is no reason why a professional woman in the basketball league should play some random dude on a Tuesday. And the reason being is that there's more for the girl to lose than there is for the guy to gain. For them to gain. If she beats him, it's because she's a professional. What happens if she tears an ACL? Her season's done because she's playing a meaningless pickup game, trying to prove something that she already knew the answer to anyway. The other thing is that what is different between American women's basketball across the world? Well, look, it's the pay scale. Remember, Diana Taurasi a couple years ago, she left the WNBA for the entire season because her team in Moscow paid her entire salary to sit at home, so she could ready for the season overseas in Moscow. The women play 2 times a year because guess what? They make more money over there than they do over here. The best players in the WNBA make twice as much overseas than they do here. If they made anywhere equivalent to what they made over here, I promise you they wouldn't be playing twice a year. They wouldn't be risking themselves playing in different countries every year. I mean, they'll play exhibition games, but you think they'll play a full-fledged season overseas if they had the money to make it over here? No, they wouldn't. So what do we need to do to fix the WNBA before I close this topic out? Well, number one, we have to get more interest in this league. And how do you do that? Number one, we have to put money into it. Scared money don't make money. The people who run the WNBA and the marketing department, the teams themselves, have to go out there and market this league. The girls are already marketable as themselves. If you've watched any of the WNBA girls on social media, I promise you, look at Liz Cambridge's WNBA, her profile. You look at Maya Moore. There's so many of them across the league. You look at Diana Taurasi. You look at Candace Parker. Candace Parker's everywhere. I mean, she's everywhere. You look at I'm drawing so many different names here, but I mean, there's so many girls in this league that have so many different personalities and dynamics to themselves. Finding the right woman to market is not hard. It's not hard. All they have to do is put the dollars into it. And then after you put the dollars into it, you have to put these women on a national scale. Their All-Star game should not be on a 3:30 on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of the summer. They play in the summer for the perfect reason because baseball is the only thing on television in most cases. There should be more WNBA games. There should be more advertising, more promotion. The cities need to get behind these women. Why? Because guess what? They deserve it. They're hard workers. They put on an outstanding product. They really do. Diana Taurasi scored 8,000 points as the all-time leading scorer of the WNBA, and you know they got a footnote in SportsCenter. Liz Cambridge scored 53 points 2 weeks ago, and it was a top story at 6 o'clock, but by the time we got to 11, it was mentioned halfway through the show, and by the time we talked about it the next morning on the morning shows, it wasn't even mentioned. But she scored 53 points, which is not just a team record, not just a season high. It's the record in the entire league. Let's make that comparison. What she did was what Wilt Chamberlain did when he scored 100 points. Or in this generation, the day Kobe scored 81. That's what the comparison is. Because in the modern day NBA, Kobe's 81, we talked about that for days. There were shirts, they were everywhere. And two, speaking of shirts and marketing, guess what? They have to have gear for to people to buy. So there's a lot of things that the WNBA needs to change. It's not just the fact of it's women's basketball, because women's basketball has always been known. It's been known. People have known about women's basketball for a long time. If you go watch UConn, go watch Notre Dame. You go watch even going back in the early part of the days where UConn was just literally running through everybody in Stanford and all those schools they've had where these girls have come from. Guess what? Women's basketball just didn't start. We can go back to the days of Cheryl Miller. Women's basketball existed. And besides, if those who do not know Cheryl Miller, ask about Cheryl Miller. She ran LA. Pretty much. She was a monster. She was one of the first. Nancy Lieberman Klein. I can go back and forth. Like I said, I'm not a women's basketball historian, but at the same time, I have a daughter. And for me, teaching her not just what LeBron James and Chris Paul and Kyrie Irving, it is her knowing about people that look like her. And when I say look like her, they're women just like she is. Your Maya Moores, your Elena Deladons, your Candace Parkers, your Liz Cambridge, your Skylar Diggins Smith. you look at Angel McCautry. I want you to see yourself as as another version of Kayla McBride shooting 3-pointers. Asia Wilson, Breonna Stewart, Sue Bird, Brittany Griner. I want my daughter to see what those women do and see how hard they work, because until we get a woman playing in the NBA game, the top you're going to get is playing in the WNBA, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's completely nothing wrong with that. And for those who don't say that women can't play in the NBA, remember Mark Cuban thought about Brittany Griner and said she can probably play in the NBA because she's that skilled. So, for all the men out there, like I said, I'm going to wrap this up before I get into baseball. For all the men out there in the physical realm of everything, just remember this one quick thing. If you think you possibly could beat a girl in the WNBA, or you think that an average group of Joes can beat a group in the WNBA, there's an episode of Martin I want you to watch. If you've never watched the TV show Martin, go ahead and look this up. There's an episode of Martin, Tommy, and Cole played a couple of the girls on the Olympic squad, and they basically got the break speed off of them. Most people are the size of Martin, Tommy, and Cole across the country, and those WNBA girls. Well, I think it was Cheryl Swoops among others. Can't remember Swoops, Leslie. I forgot who the other person was on the episode. They're girls playing now, and most men look like Martin, Cole, and Tommy. So, if you have athletic ability and you're a guy you think can be a girl's perfectly fine, but you're not playing professional basketball. If you were that good, you would have the ability to be playing at a professional level right now. Before I drop this point and go to the next one, last point for me on this one is China has 1 billion people. Okay? 0.5% of 1 billion people is right around 100,000 people. Mind you, that's just one country. And if 100,000 people, if that's the case, I said earlier, 99% all the women WNBA players could be 99% of all the men right now. If you think about 99.5% of 1 billion, and like I said, China is a country of 1 billion. That is what 100,000 people, 10,000 people. So they're beating 10,000 men out of 1 billion can beat a WNBA player. Now, mind you, that number is going to be way less than that. Because you look at the NBA rosters now, it's 450 men in the NBA. I'm not counting the 15-man rosters. Times 30 is 450. You got some really, really good players over in Europe. Guys that should be playing in the NBA but are not. And then you have guys that are just, are really good basketball players. They're just not in the league. When I say the really, really good basketball players, they are playing in different countries across the world. That's not even 1,000, maybe 2,000 men. And we're talking across the entire world. That can. I'm not saying LeBron James will lose to a girl in WNBA. I'm not saying that, or one of those girls will beat can beat can Brittany Griner hang in a game with DeMarcus Cousins was completely healthy. I never said that. What I'm saying is if a bunch of NBA guys saw some WNBA girls on the court, I guarantee they get run and they get buckets at the same time. But mind you, those are the most well-tuned and most well-tuned athletes you're going to find anywhere in basketball. So, if it's only 450 of them, and I'm sorry, the average guy is not going to beat a girl in WNBA. I hate to tell you that. So, as I transition to the next part of everything, let's get into Major League Baseball. So, Major League Baseball is a sport that at the same time is going through a lot of the issues WNBA has, because guess what? The baseball trade deadline is Tuesday. And one thing that Major League Baseball has been going through in the last few years is that the interest in baseball has changed. It used to be America's pastime. I remember growing up, I'm now 35, right before the 94 strike, baseball was everything. Baseball was everything. NFL was a great sport. It was a highly rated sport in basketball where it was, but baseball was that sport. The 94 strike pretty much killed baseball at that point, and then we had the McGwire and Sosa comeback. And made baseball more relevant again because you had two guys chasing the home run record. And then we saw the part of the 2000s where Barry Bonds dominated, and then steroids hit, and baseball really started declining because really baseball is one of those sports. It is long. It's 9 innings. And it's not exactly, you have your high plays, you have a lot of strikeouts, there's a lot of time in between plays, pitches, so on and so forth. But at one point, baseball was the sport everybody played. So why is baseball not on a bigger scale now? Baseball has an insane contract, but Rob Manfredi in the All-Star game had mentioned the fact of the best player in the last, since Barry Bonds laced him up. And I know Bonds, we talk about the steroids, but Barry Bonds is one of the greatest players of all time, juiced up or not. He's still considered one of the greatest players of all time, even though he's not in the Hall of Fame. The best player in the modern day era is Mike Trout. And Mike Trout right now is putting up numbers and doing things that we've never seen in baseball. I mean, at his age, at his trajectory, we're talking about one of the all-time great players in baseball. Just the projections for him, if he continues to go, are going to be insane. And he plays in one of the biggest markets in the country, which is the Los Angeles market. The problem is he plays in Anaheim. Well, Rob Manfredi came out the All-Star game saying, hey, he needs to be much more to market himself, to make himself more marketable to the public. Well, Mike Trout is one of the quietest guys you're going to find. He's to himself. He's to his job. He's to his craft. He's not, he not to say he doesn't deal with fans or, he's not very approachable or interacting with fans. It's just the fact that his personality is just much more laid back. And so the commissioner asked for Trout to step up, become much more of a spokesperson for baseball. Number one, that's completely the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Number one, you don't call it your star player and tell him to be much more personable to the actual public. This is on baseball for not marketing their players very well, and they have not done a good job marketing players at all. You have guys like Giancarlo Stanton down in Miami, or now he's in New York, one of the biggest home run hitters in baseball, along with Aaron Judge. They have a modern Gary Sanchez, which creates a modern-day murderer's row because there's so many power hitters. Didi Gregorius, you have Didi, you have a whole bunch of power hitters in New York. Greg Bird, and you're marketing these guys. Here's the problem, Major League Baseball, and this is something you have Bryce Harper in Washington, who is the quote-unquote rock star of baseball. You have Clayton Kershaw. You have the Houston Astros who won the World Series. Baseball, it's not like baseball doesn't have marketable players. It's the fact that baseball doesn't do anything to market themselves. They tried the grassroots campaign to bring a lot of the urban youth into the game, but the problem with baseball is that baseball is very expensive and there's a lot of travel involved in it. Baseball is an expensive sport, and if you live in an urban community, and like I said, I'm a 35-year-old black man, so I get it. It's an expensive sport. Okay. It's not one of those things you can get up and say, you know what, let me go find an area to go pick up. Let me find a bunch of my friends and let's go play in a big field for a couple hours a game of baseball. We got to have bats, balls, everything else. Bases, so on and so forth. It's easier to play a game of pickup basketball because all you need is a simple court, a ball, and a net. All you need to do, and you can play 1-on-1, 2-on-2, so on and so forth. And that's in pretty much any inner city. Even with soccer's coming to the point now where soccer's like basketball. You can play a game of pickup soccer anywhere. All you got to do, you don't really need a net. I've seen many of people play soccer and the goal be the fence. It's a little bit different. Baseball's not one of those sports where you can just pick up and play with a group of guys or a group of kids. It's not a group of kids that go out there and play baseball. It's just not. So what does baseball need to do to market themselves? Well, here's the thing. Baseball has a deal with Fox. Yes, Fox Television, the same folks that do a great job with the NFL, that did, I think, a pretty well, a decent job with the World Cup. I mean, because the times of the game is a little bit different. They're playing during the daytime because of the time zone difference being out of Russia. They did a solid job of the World Cup. But you're telling me on a Saturday night, now mind you, most Saturday nights, they do have baseball on, but last night the UFC was on, and they have a UFC contract. But during the summertime, once again, where baseball, where sports are not particularly relevant, and a lot of a lot of stations are showing reruns or showing summer shows, you can't give me Major League Baseball 2 or 3 nights a week on Fox. Besides Saturday night, you can't get me, besides the Saturday game of the week, you can't get me a game on Wednesday night. I know ESPN has their share of games because they have their television contract, but you can't give me a nationally televised game on for baseball. I mean, ESPN has normally done very well by the sports they have, and the ratings on their side of everything. But when is the national media and the big time networks are going to step behind the major sports like they do the NFL? I promise you. You look at what the NFL does on their television side of things. They market football like it's nothing. Look at what NBC does for Sunday Night Football, and look what they're doing now for Thursday Night Football, or when the CBS had it. Football is football, and I understand people love the game of football, but mind you, football is starting to slip because of all the stuff going on with the anthem, Colin Kaepernick, and all the other things going on in the NFL, which will be another topic for another day. With everything going on in professional sports right now, especially on the NFL side, baseball has every opportunity to make it up. But you know what? The NBA has overshadowed baseball the last couple years during the summer. The NBA has not had a game literally since the middle of June. But why are we talking more about the NBA from the end of the regular season, even through the draft, through right now? We have talked more basketball in the last 45 days than we've talked Major League Baseball. And baseball has All-Star game last week, and they had the home run contest. They had everything All-Star weekend, a beautiful weekend, All-Star weekend, how you want to call it, because the game is really during the week, in Washington. A great weekend. A great week, or whatever you want to call it, a great break. And the still top stories have been LeBron James signing in Los Angeles. You got the whole Kawhi Leonard situation. You had, players and issues and beefs and what the Lakers were doing. When they went out and signed JaVale McGee, Lance Stevenson, they signed Rajon Rondo, those made bigger headlines than what's going on in baseball. Okay, baseball is a long season, but baseball's been doing this since before time probably existed. They've been playing 162 games for how long now? And at one point, it was the most dominant sport in sports. So why, with baseball being so dominant, what happened? Well, baseball needs to put marketing dollars into it. But the difference is between that and the WNBA is that baseball has the money. They have 30 clubs. They have a television contract that's insane. So why is not more money being promoted into the sport? Well, here's another problem. When you turn on Fox Television, you're watching the same 7 teams every single week. It's Yankees, it's Dodgers, it's Red Sox, it's the Cubs. It's the same 5, 6, 7 teams every single week. Why is Mike Trout not being shown? Why people don't Mike Trout? Because Mike Trout's not being shown on television. The Houston Astros only became a household name because they made the World Series. You ask the common baseball fan or the person who watches baseball on the common basis, name 5 Houston Astros right now. They probably couldn't even do it. Name 5 guys of the starting 5 in the diamond on the field. Not the pitching staff, because everybody knows Justin Verlander. But you ask them to name 5 position guys on the Astros, a commoner. You walk in a mall right now that is not a baseball fan, and ask them to name 5 guys on the Houston Astros that's not in the pitching staff, and they probably couldn't do it. Baseball needs to start manufacturing stars by putting them and making them marketable. They need to be commercials. Bryce Harper is the rock star of baseball right now. Yes, he's on a Gatorade commercial every now and then, but I promise you, Bryce Harper, I see more commercials for Russell Westbrook than I do for Bryce Harper. Do you know how many times I've seen that State Farm commercial with Chris Paul and James Harden and Trevor Ariza driving in a car? I've seen that way more than I've seen a Bryce Harper commercial. It is what it is. Baseball needs to get these guys out there in the market. I mean, if you look at the colorful personalities in baseball, because there's so many different styles, they're from so many different places, they should be able to hit every single demographic without a single problem. There shouldn't be a problem with marketing baseball players because there's so many of them. They're so diverse. There should be so many cultures on television and ads buying up ad time to get these guys. Why? These guys aren't being marketed. They're not. There's so many guys in the Latin community. There's so many guys in the African American community, and all across the board that are not, that can be tapped into, but they're not. Why can't it be done? It should be done. There's enough marketing dollars to be taken care of. There's small market teams, yes, so what? Small market teams have won the World Series, and we've seen this happen many of times. I don't need to go back in history and find a small market team that can't be competitive. Yes, the problem is small market teams lose their players because they go to big markets. But if these guys, and you learn with Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, you don't have to be in the biggest market in sports to be marketable. Russell Westbrook plays in Oklahoma City. You compare Oklahoma City we're talking basketball because that's where it is. Because the NFL is a different story. You look at basketball as Russell Westbrook. He plays in Oklahoma City. He plays in one of the smallest markets, if not the smallest market in the NBA. But why is Russell Westbrook everywhere? He's a Team Jordan athlete. Russell's everywhere. And guess what? He plays in Oklahoma City. Kevin Durant had a humongous Nike contract and played in Oklahoma City before he even went to Oakland. He had all that before he even went to Oakland. Guys nowadays do not have to be in New York or Los Angeles. This wasn't the days when Shaquille O'Neal left Orlando to go to LA and become a movie star. Guys can be movie stars anywhere else. LeBron James played in Cleveland, Ohio. Not exactly the biggest marketing place in the world. But because Nike was smart enough to maximize his marketability, as well as the fact that he is, arguably one of the greatest players of all time, that's different. Would Kobe Bryant been Kobe Bryant if he would have been not in LA? In the late part of the '90s, I think it was different. You had to be in big markets then. But the NBA has grown to the point where you don't need big markets now. Baseball can relive that. There's so many good players everywhere. We have to baseball as a group. Number one, has to keep their guys in their cities. They have to fix the salary situation. They've got to make it an even playing field. And like the NBA and the NBA, for example, they have to go ahead and get a salary cap put in place so that everybody doesn't leave, and guys don't go stack and form go stack to these big cities. Chicago, New York, go play for the Yankees, go play for the Cubs, go play for the Dodgers. It's like I think Philadelphia's trying to catch up with everybody. Nowadays, everybody is running the same 5 teams. Every time you see a major free agent, it's all about the same 6 to 7, 8 teams in baseball every single year fighting for free agents. There's 32 teams in baseball. So the Tampa Bay Rays and the Miami Marlins, because they don't spend the money, because they don't have the money, because they don't generate the money, because for whatever reason they don't market their club good enough, or they play in facilities like Tampa, which needs to be a new one, and Miami, for some reason, has a brand new beautiful stadium, and they keep selling off their players. Baseball's got to figure this out, because baseball's a great sport, and this time of day is watching Mike Trout, you have to. It's come to that point now where you've got to make changes in the sport to make it better. But calling out your star player doesn't work. But as we close the deadline, like I said, there have been a lot of moves being made. Manny Machado was made to the Dodgers about 10 days ago. And Chris Archer's the main guy left. There's some few starting pitchers out there that could be had as teams load up for the World Series. Like I said, the Dodgers went and got Baltimore's Manny Machado. There's another reason why big money taking from Baltimore, who was actually a really, really cool club. They've just been terrible the last couple of years. It's weird when guys start selling off players, teams start selling off their best players to get other players. So there's some things in baseball to be changed, but calling out your star player is not helping the marketability. And for some reason, baseball has got to figure out how to take a stranglehold on the rest of the sports. So before I transition to the last topic of the day. We are literally less than a week away from the NFL season kicking off. Training camps have gone across the entire league. We're transitioning from the WNBA to baseball, now over to the NFL. The NFL training camps began last week, and one of the big stories last week was Julio Jones holding out, and now we have the Aaron Donald situation, which is getting nastier and nastier by the day because Aaron Donald will refuse to play for the contract that he has. Le'Veon Bell didn't get the money he was looking for, and Julio Jones held out for less than a day, and before his contract got restructured, and the Falcons added $3 million onto his deal to keep him pacified, and they'll rework things next summer. So where do we stand with the NFL? The NFL right now. Normally, I'm so excited about the NFL. I'm kind of hit and miss. Now, I say I'm excited because, yes, I get a chance. I do cover the Jaguars down here. I do a lot of, going back and forth to Jacksonville, so I do cover them. But with that being said, the excitement level of the NFL has kind of been dampened because of a lot of the issues with the national anthem and player standing, and then the whole issue with owners telling players how to conduct themselves during the national anthem. The players make the owners the money, the owners cut the checks for the players. So it's now come down to a modern day situation where it's being divided. You have owners telling players how they're supposed to conduct themselves in the field, and players want to show and express themselves in a country that is allowing for the First Amendment, for free speech. They're not doing anything wrong, but some of them for not just standing up. To some people, it's not about standing up. If you go back to the entire reason why this whole thing started was Colin Kaepernick asking for basically for equal rights. For America to pay attention to the fact of there are groups of people in America right now that are not being treated equally and fairly. It's been like that for a long time. We've seen many a protest. And the sad part about it is every time, in most cases, especially lately, when people protest against something they don't believe in, they don't come back in sports. We can go back to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf when he had the issue back in '94 being a Muslim and it came to the anthem. And you know what? Mahmoud didn't have much of a career after that. And he was one of the better players in the entire league. He was the reason. He was Steph Curry before Steph Curry was in the NBA. If people know Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, go spell it out, or go type in Chris Jackson and go watch those tapes when he was at LSU. Go to watch tapes at Denver. He was a big time scorer. He played on a team with a lot of different weapons, and he was one of the best, most underrated players in his era. And I'm talking about when I say lights out shooter, lights out shooter. You look at Colin Kaepernick, a guy who led his team to the Super Bowl. He led the 49ers to the Super Bowl, and he made a statement and spoke his mind, and he believed in something that is true, and he decided to take a stand on it. But Colin Kaepernick can't find a job, which is weird because there have been so many quarterbacks that have been recycled over and over and over again, and they've hired guys from arena football. They brought guys in from different places, not to knock those guys from coming in and showing their effort, but Kaepernick can barely even get a workout. He can't even go to Canada to play football, and he was speaking from his mind and speaking from a place where he believed it. And you know what? I'm all for it, but he can't find a job. And right now, you go through this week with Jerry Jones and the whole Papa John's situation. Papa John's was one of the corporate sponsors of the NFL. The owner of Papa John's, the creator, made a statement about using the N-word on an actual conference call. And the wonderful part is the teams that were with Papa John's decided to say, you know what? Yeah, we're kind of done with you. Except for one. And that is belonging to the man of Mr. Jerry Jones, who has basically said, we're going to stand by Papa John's. And by the way, he piggybacked off the Miami Dolphins saying all our players will stand for the national anthem. Great. Well, the Cowboys players had a chance to make a statement. Some of their best players on the roster are African American. Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott being two of the more prominent ones, and neither one will say they will basically stand for the flag. Well, America's team is starting to fall America's apart here now because a fan base is now alienated. You have a part of the fan base who is not happy with this, and you know what? I agree with that. You have a right to be unhappy with this, and it's not exactly the easiest thing in the world when you're forcing people to do something that in some cases some players do not want to do. It is a form of kind of a modern day slavery, to be honest with you. And it's not a right or wrong issue, but my issue is you cannot tell a player what to do when it comes to that. If they want to believe a certain belief, as long as it's not being disrespectful, as long as they're not running on the field and stomping on the flag, or they're burning the flag in the middle of it, all these guys are doing is choosing not to stand. That's all they're doing. They're not doing anything. They're not playing loud music or a trumpet or a trampoline or jumping over or causing distraction. All they're doing is is saying they're right not to stand during the national anthem. And there's people across the country who believe that they should do that because it's a natural right. Well, guess what? We've allowed ourselves, especially the principles of this country, to be able to speak ourselves with freedom of speech. And it is a freedom of speech. It is an act. It's a nonverbal way of speaking. And what they're doing by standing is nothing. It's not doing nothing offensive. They're just showing what they believe in. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's my opinion for another day. So what does that have to do with the entire NFL and the landscape of everything? Well, it's 4 days away from the NFL. And a lot of this stuff is now taking over what is supposed to be one of the most fun times of the year. Guys are getting ready for the next, and people have been counting down this day since February 4th. Since February of last year, we've been counting down all these weeks to the NFL. It just seems like as we get closer, the more stuff comes out, and it's starting to take away from the excitement of the NFL. There are people who still have not come back to the NFL after last year. And the more this goes on, more NFL fans are going to go away. And it's going to come to a breaking point between players and owners on where this is going. And until the players and owners can figure this out, it's going to come to a head sooner or later. It's going to come to a head sooner or later. It's going to take the right group of players to fix this whole problem. And they're going to have to sit down with players and owners. But what does this affect the NFL? As far as my excitement level, it kind of affects it because of the fact of I'm one of these people who love the NFL. I love the National Football League. It's football. I mean, it's what Sundays are all about. It's going, watching, 3 hours of your favorite team, giving it its all, physical contact, big plays, highlights. For those who play fantasy football, is what guys are going to be, are going to help you win your fantasy football league so you can talk junk at the cooler on Monday and Tuesday. It's literally 1 p.m. till, now 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. On a Sunday, you're spending the entire day, which feels like a work day, watching football. But you do get breaks because you get the little break in between the 1 and the 4:15 games, and then you get one between the end of the 4:15 games or 4:30 games, and then the primetime game on Sunday night. You get that little break so you can go grab something to eat, go take a shower, do what you need to, entertain the kids for half an hour, whatever you have to. Before you have Sunday night. So you have all day Sunday, and you look forward to it all week. You have the conversations, whether it be at the water cooler, it be at the barbershop, it'd be at the grocery store, it could be anywhere else. Your phone calls with your boys, talking junk in group chats, in fantasy football rooms. This is what people look for all year long, and it keeps getting overshadowed by things that are not football related. For me, it's starting to take a little of the damper and the air out of the thing. I want to talk about Tom Brady, and I want to talk about how can people stop the Eagles this year? Can the Eagles repeat? What are they going to do with the quarterbacking situation? Can somebody in the NFC, whether it be the Rams and all their retooled defense, can New Orleans and Atlanta, can New Orleans get over the fact of that play last year that haunted them, the Stephon Diggs play? Can Atlanta somehow find offense enough and consistent offense to get themselves back to a place where they were 2 years ago? Can Minnesota get over the fact that they got blown out by the Eagles in the NFC Championship game? Will Aaron Rodgers, become the Aaron Rodgers of old right before it is time for a humongous payday, probably the richest in the history of the NFL? What are the Cowboys going to do? The Cowboys are the most marketable team in the league and missed the playoffs again. Can Jerry Jones get those guys in order? Can Zeke and Dak Prescott get over the fact of Dez Bryant not being there? Let's go in the AFC. Can somebody beat the New England Patriots in the AFC? In the last year, can Pittsburgh do it in the last year of having their big three of Roethlisberger, Brown, and Bell together? Can those three guys, the three Bs, Ben, Bell, and Brown, get them back to the Super Bowl one last time before Le'Veon Bell jets in free agency? Can Andy Reid somehow turn Pat Mahomes into a better version of Alex Smith? And can the Chiefs somehow overtake everybody in the AFC? What about Jacksonville, the league's best defense, returning 10 of 11 starters? Can Blake Bortles recreate magic without having Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, or Mercedes Lewis on offense? Can Houston get back the guys they had injured last year, Deshaun Watson and J.J. Watt, and get themselves back? Because Watson was phenomenal before he got hurt. What about Oakland and San Diego? San Diego's a team everybody's talking about as being the sleeper. Oakland they brought back Chucky. They have David Carr healthy. They added new weapons. They have Jordy Nelson. Can those guys get back to where they are? What are we going to do about Cleveland? They're talking bringing Dez Bryant. They had retooled their offense and their roster, and they added Baker Mayfield, a guy that has the charisma. Can his game on the field match the charisma he has off the field? Can they somehow get Jarvis Landry, Josh Gordon when he gets back, and potentially Dez Bryant in a receiving core? And how is that going to work? I can't wait to see it. There are so many storylines in the NFL right now that I will want to talk about. But on this podcast, I'm really spending time talking about stuff that happens off the field. And once again, the off the field stuff is shadowing what's on the field. And that is a problem as we get 4 days away from the Hall of Fame game. 4 days away from watching my generation of guys that I grew up watching, finally get enshrined in the Hall of Fame. Four of the best players I've ever watched are going to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame on Saturday night. And that's being overshadowed by the fact of what's going on off the field. I see more stories about owners and teams than actual players and coaches and strategies. NFL preseason starts August 9th. August 9th for everybody else. It's Thursday for the teams in the Hall of Fame game, but it's August 9th everywhere else. And I'm more concerned about what's going on with owners and the national anthem. Can we please fix this problem so I can get my football back? Because I did not want to spend 2018 talking about this again. I really don't. But it's going to be a continuing problem until the owners and players can figure this out. But tell me what you think. This is the Wonderful World of Sports. We're going to talk about everything going forward. This is going to be a weekly podcast. This is the debut edition, like I said, before the NFL training camp starts, before NFL season starts. And like I said, this podcast will have some NBA in it, but I do have another NBA podcast, which is around the association. And like I said, check out the show on iTunes, on Spreaker, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio. The Wonderful World of Sports will be on iHeartRadio and Spreaker in September. Once there's more recordings of the show, but right now we're on Spreaker for the next few weeks. But this is an enjoyable show. Like I said, this is my way of talking sports all the way through. I want to know if you agree with me. Do you disagree? Do you agree with any of the topics that I spoke about today? Leave your comments below, and I really want to hear about it. So, this is Danny Thompson. Follow me on Twitter at NBADT29. My show, which is Around the Association, is on Facebook, Around the Association Radio. The show, The Wonderful World of Sports, is on Facebook, which is Wonderful World of Sports on Facebook. Follow me everywhere. Leave comments below. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.